So welcome everybody. It's 9:02. The meeting is called to order. I am Nancy Vandell, Chair, and I certify a quorum. Would everybody please introduce themselves? Starting with the committee.
Michael Beachley, scribe. I have no conflicts of interest here.
Tom Sipe?
No conflicts of interest.
Tom Sipe, editor, no conflicts.
Okay, and I have no conflicts that I know of. Wyatt could not attend today, so. But
I'm Jeff Weitzel, outgoing secretary of the NCAC.
And continuing communications task force member.
Yes.
Yes. Gary, would you like to introduce yourself?
You're on mute.
Sorry, I was on mute. Gary Billingsley, Secretary-elect.
I think you're, that's right. You don't take over for another few days, do you? Great, thank you. And Tom.
Tom Perhodich, Nancy at the general meeting expressly asked me to attend. And I would almost do anything she asks, so.
Tom is our unofficial member that doesn't count in the quorum, but in every other way. So thank you. Welcome, Tom.
Hi, everybody.
Otherwise known as Tom 2.
In this context.
In this context, yes. All right. So I think everybody hopefully saw the agenda. I would like to defer the approval of the minutes, if that's okay, if there are no objections. Michael did a tremendous job putting a very complex meeting together in the minutes, but I just frankly have not had the bandwidth to review, and it was a really, really critical meeting. So if there are no objections, I'll defer that to the next meeting. Would that be okay? Okay. So we have my report, and then we have our interview with Jeff and Gary, mainly Jeff, on the Secretary and Communication Task Force responsibilities, particularly as Jeff has done them so well over the past year. And then go into policies and procedures, discussion action plan, and thanks Tom for preparing that and going through and noting that it was a big improvement. Thank you. So all of this is in the meeting folder. Did everybody have a chance to look at the documents in the meeting folder? The link is on the agenda. And then we'll talk about kind of a brief action plan, and then meeting and action items summary. Public comment is at the end, but it's a very small group, so please feel free to just weigh in. I think Mark said he was going to be attending as well. Otherwise, I don't know that we'll have anyone else. And that's it. So on my report, you know, we've been we haven't taken the summer off completely, but we've definitely taken kind of a breather. So we've had monthly meetings instead of 2 times a month. Following this meeting, we will go back to our regular schedule of first and third Mondays, beginning at 9. And we will really be getting going again. So I think this has been a good time to really go to look at our main focus for the year, which will be the policies and procedures. We're likely to go back and forth a little bit between the policies and procedures and the bylaws. If we do something in the policies and procedures that need to have a bylaws tweak, we can do that, but hopefully there won't be too much of that. We do have a 3-week period because we have an extra Friday in August. So our next meeting is going to be on August 21st. We'll have 3 weeks in between. At this point, after this meeting, we will be pretty much done with interviewing the officers. Tom, you're on the community subcommittee, plan subcommittee. So do you feel like there would be value in interviewing the subcommittee, or do you feel like you could represent the subcommittee and as we develop policies and procedures for that section?
Well, of all of us who know the process, who are going through the process, I might know it better, but they're the subject matter experts. So I'm a little bit torn on that. I am not a subject matter expert, but I know what the mechanics are.
So it might be good to go ahead and invite them for maybe at least a short, we could come up maybe with an
Yeah.
initial stab and then ask them to come in for a short time to comment on it and make any
Yeah, I think
additions.
so.
Okay,
I know where the document's going, but the content is the actual important stuff.
okay, sounds good. So at the executive board meeting, and Michael attended as parliamentarian, the board appointed Derek Dolehite to the communications task force, and then there was a second person, right, Jeff, that was appointed. So there's a webmaster, and then there's a second person that's been appointed that's also interested in the
So Richard has not been appointed. He has expressed interest, and it's on the agenda for
this next meeting
to appoint him and me.
Okay. So that's really great that we're getting some volunteers to come forward for the communications task force. We still need some other people that Jeff will be going through on his list that he sent out. And then we don't have anyone at this point for the outreach task force. So I'm looking at you, Susan, but I think that's going to be a really important task force as well.
Nancy, if we could go back to the community plan, that's actually an ad hoc group that probably only is going to function every 20 years. So I'm not sure that it makes sense to document them, because by the time we get done documenting it, they'll be done.
Yeah, they may be done. Okay, maybe we want to make it more generic on subcommittees in general. We keep the bylaws because it's standing. And someone, I think at the last meeting, someone remarked that when the community plan is done, that group could end up transitioning into some other monitoring group perhaps, or something like that. But I think that's a completely different subject. So you raise a good point, Tom. Maybe we just keep it kind of generic for now.
Okay.
We'll think about that, huh?
I'll ask Rand and see if he concurs.
Okay, sounds good. Well, that's about all I had for my report. Things have been nice and quiet. So moving on to the interview, I'm going to share the screen. Jeff, would you prefer to share with your document to make changes, or may I share?
I don't. Sure, I'll share, and then I can update it as we go.
Okay, that sounds good. I'm going
permission
to allow you to
share.
share. And I just want to thank you in advance on behalf of the committee for putting all that thought into that. That's going to make today's discussion
Well, I
a
need
good
to do
start.
this for Gary too. So
Right.
yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to turn the meeting over to you to go through that, and then we can all kind of feel free to comment as Jeff goes through this.
So I'm going to go through this with two lenses. One of what of these things need to be actually written down in the policies and procedures, and also this committee is kind of a nexus of caring how things are done and being a little bit more activist. So we may talk about things that are a little bit outside the strict purview of the bylaws, but just because this is the group of people that really care the most, it's probably a good place to talk about it. So starting with minutes, for those of you who weren't at the executive meeting, I introduced a discussion of how strict, according to Oregon public meeting law, we are not required to have both minutes and videos. We can just have videos. And do we need to do minutes at all? And there is an opinion, especially from Nancy and Michael, that like minutes were really like had a value, had some value. And well, maybe that's a good place to kind of jump off is, so I want to set a theme for this, discussion today that we've had that I did the secretary in a particular way this past year, where I was very activist and kind of did a lot of things. And I don't know if Gary intends to do things that way. And future secretaries may not. And we should probably be thinking, like when we write down the policies and procedures, be thinking of the secretary as a administrative functionary, and also be cognizant of bandwidth. That like the more things we write down that the secretary and the communications task force are supposed to do, the more things that we're probably not going to get done. So we should write down the things that really matter. So do minutes really matter if we are posting videos? And the thesis that Nancy put out there is that, oh, maybe people will come look at the minutes to see if they can find videos. And we don't know if anyone's going to do that, but like my hypothesis is no one looks at the minutes. So discuss. That's
I have an opinion on the minutes. I think the most valuable thing of the minutes is a list of action items. That's something that we can refer to in the committee, and also people can look at and say, okay, they're going to talk about these things. I think the rest of it is probably not as useful, but the action items are the real key.
And any kind of actual formal vote, you know, and showing that the meeting was held, who was attending, you know, that kind of thing. Very simple.
I agree with what Tom said. When I do minutes, sometimes I tend to be a little anal retentive, but there's two things to point out. I think one of them is that minutes help for people who want to or have only a few minutes to look at what's going on. Whereas an hour and a half video is probably not going to happen as often. The second thing is that the reality strikes me that currently there's a lot of activity, a lot of contribution, a lot of attention by a lot of people right now, and that's not always going to be the case. As Jeff, you suggest that perhaps in policies and procedures, we add little qualifiers such as when possible, or it is desirable, or something of that sort, rather than we shall. And that leaves as a suggestion that it's a good thing to do, but it's not an essential thing to do.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Michael. We could actually, even in some of these job description things, say, have two categories: required and desired, or something like that.
Desired, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I want to welcome Mark Everett to the meeting. Welcome, Mark. Thank you for coming.
So along those lines, if we added the definitions of shall and should and may at the beginning, that'll make the language of the other stuff quite a bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that.
So Jeff, after we had that discussion, you did a simpler version of minutes, and did you find that it was a little faster for you in the board meeting and in the general meeting too? I guess it was just the general meeting that you were.
So I think the very minimal version, where like suppose you took out the links, to the video, because that was much faster than what I've been doing in the past, but it still took like half an hour.
Mm-hmm.
But if one just sort of writes down the major topics of conversation, like you're mostly just reproducing the agenda. And I suppose you could add the things that were new, like the fact that people wanted to talk about that bed and breakfast and all the horses and stuff. But how about like we say that the minutes have to record votes, have to record action items where someone has like there's something that is going to happen outside the meeting based on what it was decided in the meeting, or I guess decisions, that kind of thing. And any notable topics of conversation that weren't in the agenda. Like what about those four things? Is kind of the minutes have to do this, and if they don't do anything else, it's okay because we have the video.
Right, and then minutes do need to just say, this should be just boilerplate. I would think you could just do from time to time, but the date, the place of the meeting, so like Zoom, or if it was some other place, who attended, is usually required, and that shouldn't be that hard, should it? With Zoom, particularly, of being able to put the attendees in.
The attendees is not too hard, especially if you don't format it. Like I put it in a table. If you don't put it in a table, it's even easier.
Right, because that can come back if there's any issue with voting or whatever, to be able to show who attended. Hopefully that will never happen, but
Mhm.
that's one reason that I think Robert's Rules does want attendees in there.
Mhm.
And the data, the time it starts, the time it stops, but all that should be pretty simple. And you shouldn't have to watch the whole video to do that. I think that's what we're trying to avoid. Is when we talked with you at the board meeting, it was kind of like you have to sit there and watch the whole video, and even when it's on 1.5 or 2 speed, it's still it can take time. So trying to avoid having to do that. And then anyone who wants to could go back and watch the full video. And we can fill in some of that stuff from Robert's Rules. And it usually, for attendees, it's usually officers present, officers not present, and then others. I don't know. Do you have anything to add on that, Michael?
I'm watching this. He's pretty much got it all. One of the things that I do is to try to put down, lines of argument or background information. I mean, it's stuff that really is not necessary to be there.
Right.
But it's nice to have, because I do this after the fact, and I have the time to do it. But that's not always possible. So I think Jeff's got the idea here quite well.
Yeah, I think so too, because I think it's sometimes, I mean, that could be a desired would be arguments for and against, but
Yeah,
in
sure.
some ways that can actually be problematic too. If there's one person objecting or whatever, do we need to note that? So.
Well, that I think is a judgment call.
Right.
Based on the importance or the efficacy or the concern. And if it's a high level of concern, yeah, I think it ought to be detailed, because we will be then doing, a full range of arguments for the County Board of Commissioners or something like that.
Right. And then we'll have the video. And then it's going to be really interesting to see how this meeting summary from Zoom does. I used it for a different organization, and it was really quite remarkable how well it organized things. You still had to go in and tweak it. So I think it's worth having a discussion perhaps in the future after we see how this works.
Yeah.
In terms of Oregon public meeting law, on do we have to, you don't want to put a raw version of it up. It's not accurate. So it seems like it really should be restricted to being of use to the secretary or maybe meeting attendees or whatever, but not posted as is. It still has to be transformed into actual minutes that are approved. So we'll see how useful it proves to be. But I think particularly for your minutes, Michael, where you go into great depth, I think hopefully it'll be a really good starting point.
Well, I am totally unaware of this capability. So
I think it's new.
Yeah, so I'm interested in seeing what actually happens there.
Yeah, and everybody, let me just reiterate: we have a small group, and it's kind of a casual interview session. So please feel free to our guests to speak up as well if you have any thoughts and opinions. And particularly Gary, with you coming in, we particularly value your opinion on this job as you see what you would like to do or not do too. So. Okay, any other comments on minutes? Does this look okay to you, Jeff?
Yeah. Does it look okay to Gary?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, so next I have librarian. This is a major, like one of the major items listed in the bylaws, but it is not actually like something I spend a whole lot of time on. But it is probably worth some P&Ps. So you guys wrote the bylaws, you know what they say about about the responsibility of the secretary to maintain records.
Well,
Much of that-
let me just break in there and just tell you that when we did this section of the bylaws, we pretty much left it intact. We did a little editing where there were so many detailed things in there that have done a little bit of combining or whatever, but we thought we would leave this all to the policies and procedures to really get it, and then go back and hopefully do a much simplified version of the bylaws for this section. So that was kind of a future. So I appreciate your tackling all these items here and seeing what would be good to keep.
So the main thing here that like to kind of pay attention to for policies and procedures is public meeting materials, like our compliance with Oregon public meeting law, that if a document is discussed in a meeting, that document should be available to people who want to, who are availing themselves of their right to see a public meeting. And that also includes minutes and agendas and things like that too, which I put in the same place. Like I just keep everything for meetings in the same place. And I don't know, like if you want to write down that like every meeting should have a folder, and the folder should have the agenda and the minutes in it and other meeting documents, you can. That's what I do. It seems like a pretty good way to do it. So does it need to be like I like coming as a software engineer, I like writing down too many things, like it's not necessarily good. Less is more. So you should write down the things where like you can get real value out of being specific. And I don't know if this is one of them, but I don't like, it's not, yeah. I'm just throwing out my opinions there, but you guys can have your own opinions. So
I think what we're seeing this document to be is something that could be helpful for somebody new coming in as a guideline for in terms of duties and that kind of thing, and not necessarily something that people have to follow necessarily, but hopefully a helpful guide as opposed to a hammer, you know.
Okay.
And so if you, through the last year and as your background as a software engineer, have ways that you think make sense in terms of organization that would help the next person like Gary or whoever follows him, then I think it would be helpful to put that down. But we can have some indication, as Tom said, you know, where we can use mays and shalls versus you know, that can delineate that a little bit. So I think that's kind of the take. I think committee members tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that's kind of the tack that we've been thinking of this document to take. And what's that, Susan?
I agree with what you just said, Nancy, because we want to make it so it's kind of like a transition material for the incoming person. If they say someone becomes secretary at some future date that hasn't really been following meetings or doesn't really, at some point there will be an easy way to do it. And I think anything that will help someone is helpful.
Yeah, great. I thank you. So on the meeting archives, Jeff, you have everything organized under archives, and you go into a meeting and you have a folder and you have the different things highlighted for minutes, video, chat, and agenda, I believe. At this point, you haven't really had meeting documents in general in there, right? So like if we have
I've only done that for bylaws because only bylaws or bylaws.
We're the only ones to do it. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's right. You do put documents in sometimes. So the videos, I know you have to, there's space limitations on Zoom. And so you move the videos to YouTube. Do we have like a NCAC YouTube account? Do we have to pay for it? Is there?
It's the same account. It's the same Google account that we use for email and everything else in our Google Drive. So
okay. Do we have any limits on that? I mean, like, are we able to go back and look, say if 5 years from now, would we, if we ever wanted to, would we be able to go back and look at a video?
So on the one hand, we are like at YouTube's mercy there, but I think it is a totally reasonable assumption that YouTube is going to keep making those videos indefinitely.
Okay.
So certainly, like I mean, if they take them down in 5 years, like legally, I think we're fine. Like
Mhm.
we're not. So, like otherwise we would have to spend a lot of money on storage for all of our videos. Like it would be
Right.
hundreds of dollars a year probably. So
So
but
right now, we're
YouTube can
just,
do it for free.
we,
So yeah.
so we don't have a commercial account with them or anything. You just,
Nope.
you
Just normal
post
account.
under NCAC or something. So is there something that would be helpful to put in the PNP on where those are posted or something like that to give the secretary or whoever ends up being the librarian a quick summary of how they do that?
I think there's a lot of things where writing it down is a fair amount of work. Not a fair amount of work, but like it's some work. I spent like most of a day, like several hours writing this down, and getting like deep down in the weeds and writing like here's the link and exactly how you upload to YouTube. I think we should only do that in the cases where like it's very, very difficult and or it's very, very detail oriented. It's going to be hard for one person to just hand off to the next person.
Okay.
If you guys want to write it down, I will supply the information.
One of the things that I put down on my list that I sent to you, Jeff, is the basic 101 business. Let's assume, for example, that there's a big bus that takes all of us out, and someone steps in who has very little idea of what goes on. The first question is, where does all this stuff exist? You know, that sort of information, I think, is elemental. And once it's down there, and log on, login information, passwords, all of that sort of business. Google Docs if necessary. I mean, all of that address stuff. Where does all of that stuff actually reside physically?
Yeah, I'm just because once you write that down, you have to keep it up to date. And I'm not opposed to writing things down, but I don't want to just write things down willy-nilly because then A, it becomes an unwieldy amount of information, and B, like it gets harder and harder to keep it up to date. So I just want to be judicious about what's really important to write down and if I think it's fine to write down like we have like this is the name of the Google, like our Google account. I don't think we can write a manual like anyone who comes in and does this job needs to be sufficiently technical that if we say we have a Google account, they know like either they need to know or they need to be able to get help from someone. Like we have a Google account. If you know how that works, that's all you need to know. You don't need to write a whole. So we can just say our Google account is admin@nescoNCAC.org and get the password from the last secretary. And here's something to write down. This is actually something that is worth putting in the PNP. Our important passwords, like our not important passwords, like our Zoom password, I actually have a document in our Google account that has that. But our important passwords probably should be held like I would say every single officer should be keeping a copy of those for exactly that get hit by a bus scenario.
Yeah.
So
why don't you add that? That's a good one.
I'm going to put that here, but well, actually, maybe I'll just make a note.
So are you saying that we should make all of our important passwords publicly available?
No, I'm saying that multiple people should have them written on paper.
Okay.
And hopefully people do have like password managers and put it in their own personal.
People do not have password
manager.
managers, Nancy. You and I do, but most people don't.
Okay.
Well,
Wow.
and yes, people
at
should,
least,
but they don't. So
yeah, at least two people at least should have access.
I would say every officer should have.
Yes,
I agree.
Yeah, but definitely not published. Yeah.
But that's what I'm talking about, Jeff. When I say that kind of 101 stuff, we don't all have 18-year-old grandchildren to bring us up to date. So at least, how do you get in the front door? I'm gonna say, like, I'm gonna push back on that. That like,
yeah. Let me. So
we go ahead.
Yeah, one thing to point out is writing that kind of detail down, all it would take would be one Zoom or Google update for a version, and all that detailed information could go out the window, because now you got to do it a different way.
Right. So
Right. And so I agree, not that kind of level of detail, but Gary, I think what's going to be really particularly useful in this endeavor, for us at least, is as you take over as secretary, and I realize you have a technical background, but in fact, I think you and I share our history of our work history. I'm also an electrical engineer, but I think if there are things that you feel like are useful to you as you're learning the job, that would be something to add to Jeff's document or change Jeff's document. And think of it in terms of people who may not be as technically competent. But like, I have no idea, Jeff, how you upload a video to YouTube. I mean, I'm guessing it's pretty simple, but I would have to go back to the drawing board and look at how you do that.
And it is quite simple and writing like a very brief description, but I think I'm good. Like, all this stuff is available on the internet 25, like 1,000 times over. Like, I'm sure there are 1,000 YouTube videos on how to upload a YouTube video.
Okay.
And so we should not be recreating that. And
that information would be more current than anything we could write down today.
Right.
Obsolete in 2 years.
So if someone runs for secretary and is who is very, very not familiar with this stuff at all, and we do have a lot of people like that in Esquin, but like we need to find tech help for them. Like we need that, but we can't write everything down about how to use Google and how to use Google Drive,
Sure.
how to use YouTube. So okay,
that's helpful.
Yeah.
Any other comment on that? I find that archive thing really, really helpful. I like the way you've organized it. And I'm wondering though,
on the Squarespace.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if there's, for the average person who starts getting involved and wants to look at these things, is there a place on the homepage where, because right now you have to know to go into another page, then they go into archives, and then you find the meeting notes. Is there something that has a direction for people, maybe on the homepage under the meetings page, or something that says for past meetings, go to here?
There isn't right now. That is something we could discuss, and we now have 2 people who are interested in helping with the website. So that's the kind of thing, and that wouldn't be hard to change. Even I could do that. Like that would fall in the category of things I'd be happy to just kind of do as a favor to the NCAC.
Okay.
But like the website was like the thing that I ended up putting the least amount of effort into, just because it was the least squeaky wheel. Like, people just didn't really seem to care that a lot of the information was out of date and hard to find and whatnot. Anyway, there's all kinds of things that we can do to the website to make it better. I think that's probably out of scope for this conversation.
Oh, I think you've done a terrific job with it.
I haven't done very much.
Okay, well, okay.
So like the meeting archive page, that I get credit for that. It was there before, and I think I personally think I improved it quite a bit. So back to librarian. So what you guys did, where Tom managed all of your records, that was great. And I know that not every committee will have Tom.
So far, it's been true, but
Yeah. No, I think we should make a rule. Tom will not join the next big committee.
I approve.
But I think that's an interesting idea, to just say that every committee has to have a librarian, and that they're in charge of updating their own records. Because, like, for instance, the bylaws committee, or not the bylaws committee, the community plan committee, before Tom joined, I think they would have like kicked up a fuss and said, we don't want to manage our own records, and said we don't know how to do that. But if if there was just a rule that they had to appoint a librarian and the librarian had to figure it out and get help and learn how to store things on the web, they probably would have done it. And or one of them, like probably would have just said, okay, I'll figure it out and I'll do it. I think if we do something like that, we will get mixed results. Like some people will do a much better job than others, but that that's probably still better than just sort of like putting it all on the secretary. I guess if we have a dedicated librarian, that's one thing, but like if we don't have a dedicated librarian, that's probably better than just making it the secretary's job to police how well all of the committees are keeping their public meeting materials.
So if we did have a librarian, that person could even be a guide to help a subcommittee librarian set things up, and then they could do their own maintenance or something like that.
The secretary can do that too.
Right.
But like I think whenever we kind of like name these hats, like our default assumption that most of the time someone will not be doing it, as it like someone will not have volunteered to be the librarian. And that when we do, like if we write it down in the P&Ps, like we have this role for a librarian if someone wants to do it, and that when we announce it, then we're more likely to get someone to volunteer. But our assumption should be that most of the time people are these things are gonna not have someone who's really focused on that. So
well, and the nice thing is there could be somebody who's a retired librarian who would love to do that job.
Sure.
So
yeah, like we'll get some of this stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
Like occasionally we'll get the person who just like out of nowhere, we got this awesome bylaws committee who's like really into making the bylaws better. We may some years get a really good librarian. But we should write the P&Ps kind of so that even when we don't have someone who is really putting a lot of time and energy into organizing our files, we have a strategy so that we're doing okay. And I suggest adding a P&P that subcommittees have to have a librarian. And then that the secretary can kind of like take a look at what they're doing every once in a while and bug them to oh, hey, you're letting your documents get out of date, but that spreads it out a little bit.
So Tom, I see you kind of thinking. I'm wondering, Tom, when you set up our Google Docs library, would there be some simple instructions we could put in there for somebody, or do you think it would be worth doing?
Well, not knowing what the next committee is going to be doing. So,
let's say monitoring task force.
Yeah, you would. I mean, the first thing you do is you figure out what categories of information are going to be evolving. And then you set up a subfolder for each one of those, which is what we did for, well, actually we're doing for both committees, subcommittees. Yeah, there's some general guidelines that can be had.
Yeah,
so,
and I would
maybe
say
we could just make a note to think about that. Could you just stick a note in there, Jeff, and for us to do as a placeholder to look at maybe elaborating on that a little bit, and that can be a future discussion for us. Thank you.
I'll take,
because that's been really easy to work with the way Tom set that up, and he and I can both go in and make adjustments to that. But it allows us to. One of the things he's really taught us, I think, is that to be able to have every document in there, so you can look back and see the progress of what happened.
Yeah, that's
Who
definitely
knows whether we'll have to do much of that at this point, but during the process of developing the bylaws last year, it was very helpful to have that paper trail.
You mean have every version of the document? Yeah, that's a good because I don't know if it so happens that we've had two subcommittees that are very document oriented. I don't know if that will always be the case for subcommittees. Like we don't know what the next ad hoc subcommittee is going to be. But I would say the bare minimum, the basics are have a folder for each meeting, put your agenda and minutes in there and put any documents that you like PowerPoint slides, whatever that you're doing during that meeting in there too.
Yeah.
That's like, and that's not that hard. It's just like more
Right.
that if someone is uncomfortable using Google Drive, you have to teach them how to do it. So.
Right. Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any comments on librarian? Okay,
Okay, I think that summarize that. I think that's an action for me to come up with a list of things and work with Nancy to flesh that out. So
sounds
let's
good.
make that
Thank
an
you.
action.
Okay, and emails. At the basic level, it's very simple. That just like it is a responsibility of the secretary or their designate to check the info@nescoandcac.org email. Like on a regular basis. I would suggest once a day, but or maybe 2 or 3 times a week. Let's say 3 times a week. That seems like a good number.
How about the admin at email?
Same one. The info is an alias.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I thought there were 2 separate things. Okay. So do we want to say anything in here about setting up, I guess, like you set up a bylaws email for me. Do we want to set, I don't know if you've done that for the community plan subcommittee. No, okay.
I would
Maybe
say
we don't
that
need
should
to
not
say
go in the
that.
P&Ps because you are a special snowflake in that regard. And
Okay.
maybe what should go in there is the location of the file that has the passwords for the secondary accounts like yours.
Okay. And maybe under bylaws committee where we have subcommittee where we talk about the email. I know you set it up so that you get copied or admin gets copied on everything that goes through that email system,
Nope.
right? So,
No, I do not.
oh, you did not. Oh, I thought
Nope.
you did. Okay.
No, I have the password so I can look in and read your email, but I have never done that.
Right. Oh, okay. I thought there was an automatic CC to you.
And I think
okay.
the recovery information is the admin account. So if you ever lose your password and I lose the password or the secretary loses the password, we can recover it by having it send an email to admin.
Okay.
So I'm going to write suggested account should be checked 3 times a week.
How about putting an at least in there?
Okay.
Well, do you have it
Remember,
so
these
that
are I'm just writing notes for you to
Yeah.
use. So
do you have when something is sent to info, is there a forward, say to you or to Mark?
no. Just,
No. Oh, okay. You actually have to go in and actively and look at
okay.
it.
So this is something like I, being me, have the Gmail, like I have the admin account as one of the accounts on the Gmail app on my phone. So I see emails that come into admin right away. Gary doesn't have a smartphone. And his
And even if I did, I would not want to do that. I want to make sure that the private life is separated from the volunteer life.
which I think I totally support. Like I do not recommend doing what I did. So which is why I put 3 times a week. Just like have a schedule. You're going to check the email these times and and then do whatever you need to do based on what email came in. I'm also going to write down the thing we just discussed, which doesn't really fit here, but I'm just writing it down because this is where we are.
Sure. So when you say that you would have the location, but not the password to get into it. I mean, because otherwise
Well,
it sounds like passwords are
that, like,
sitting out there.
if you have access, admin access to our Google Drive,
Got it.
then you have
Okay.
access to that file.
Got
So
And so you're
It's a
proposing that the
four-man password
officers,
manager.
so you're saying that the officers should each have that
No, I'm just saying
authorization,
that
right?
so the officers up where I have written up, I guess it's in here somewhere. The officers should have the admin password on paper.
Got it. Okay.
Mark may never log in, but if he needs to, he should have it on paper so that he can
Yeah.
log into that account and check it, like if an important email went and no one else can check it or something.
Okay.
Once you get into that account, the password for our Zoom account or for the Bylaws email account are in there too. So
Okay.
this is a PNP thing. So I have been encouraging, I don't think you guys have been doing it, but I encouraged the community plan committee to CC admin on all of the emails that they send. And I see, like when I send emails to update the executive board, I CC admin. And the reason for that is that like if we ever get a public records request or a subpoena, and maybe if all the emails are an admin, we won't have anyone like coming for our personal emails. So, and certainly like it just means we have a central repository where all the emails are. But that does create, it means there's more emails in there for the secretary to kind of fish through and kind of try and figure out what is their work, like what's their what are action items for them and what is just stuff that got CC'd. Probably like that's something we should add that well, no, that won't work. Or maybe that the subject line for a communication inside a committee should include like the committee in it. That's a good idea. But yeah, so I think it's a good idea for kind of covering our butt and kind of hopefully maybe if ever a bad thing happens, keeping lawyers out of our own email accounts. What do you folks, including Gary, think?
I'd like to see if we could maybe get another email account. I know that may be expensive, but one that would be archived so that the secretary doesn't have to have that inbox clutter.
That's a good idea. And we can just create a Gmail account just like the one that we have for Bylaws. So that's a great idea.
Could you expand on that, Tom? So are you saying that?
Well, what the way that when you want to send the notice, for instance, of the document that's been uploaded, what I do is I address it to the admin and then blind copy everybody else.
Okay.
So rather than sending it to the secretary, send it to the archive.
Mhm.
And that's the way that committee members can stay outside the bad places for the Oregon Public Meeting Law, because you don't have conversations, you know, and that email procedure should be documented in the PNP.
No, that's a great idea. And for Bylaws, I guess I should be using our email more than I have been. So I've tended to use it when there's something kind of official, when I'm communicating with a community member like last year. But I haven't been using it just for our regular stuff. So I will start doing that, and that might serve the same purpose. But I guess I could also CC admin. It wouldn't be that big a deal.
Well, that email archive account, though, will just be one big bucket that will, to find anything in it, you'll need to do a search. Otherwise, you're bringing back another task that has to be done by somebody to go in and, say, organize the inbox of that archive account to, place it in more reasonable categories or whatnot. So, I mean, I just want to make sure everybody would be okay with that. It's just one big email bucket.
Yeah, that's my
Well-
thought. The
Well, I
only
was just
person,
suggesting that that we also have a rule that when you're sending correspondence from your personal account to other people in your committee, that we have another PNP that says like include bylaws like all caps or bylaws C in the subject, like as the first part of your subject, your email subject, and that way it will be that email archive will self-organize.
Okay, well, some of them is at the time the archive's created, somebody will have to create rules to set up that.
I mean, you can do it after the fact. So I personally, given that this is only there for a lawyer someday in the future, and the lawyer has billable hours, they can figure it out.
yeah, that was gonna be my point, is
Yeah,
I don't really care about making life easier for the lawyers.
But yeah, I think it is like they can make inferences based on who
Sorry,
sent
Tom.
what emails and things like that. But yeah, I would say that if we say label like when you send an email to the rest of your committee, like put this tag on the front at the front of the subject and always CC this account. I think that's good.
Yeah,
Okay,
actually,
I
it's
just
not a
wanna make sure
CC to the account.
applied maintenance for everybody.
What was that?
I just wanted to make sure there was no implied maintenance there once this is created.
Yeah. And I think the way what I've just suggested will be totally you can just ignore it.
Yeah, because I do know that if there's a public records request, I think Sarah told us this the last meeting, if there is a public records request, the person requesting might actually have to pay any cost associated with coming up with the records, so.
Yep.
Which suggests that a county employee can
Right,
can
Can
do
do
it. And I think like, yeah, the steps that we just described where we label the emails or we put a tag on there, I think that like they all have dates on them already.
mhm.
I think that should be enough.
Well, and if I start using the bylaws one, I think that could become its own archive also.
Yeah.
But take out some of those. It sounds like community plan could be in a general one. Okay, but good for us to talk about. I think we can move on.
Okay, so the only thing different would be not CCing is the convention to mail that to and blind copy other members
Right.
for
Right,
community.
we do need to add that in. Yeah,
Okay, so
Okay.
I'll add that.
thank you.
Yeah, let me I'll add a note.
Yeah, that's a pretty important one.
I thought I was going to get away without doing anything this time. I failed again. Failed again.
Yeah, I tell you, Tom.
Okay. Land use applications. I don't know how long we should spend talking about this, but it is kind of a weird one. The bylaws say that we should post land use applications from the county on our website, which I have been doing. Although I was probably 6 months in at least before I kind of figured out what I was supposed to do with those. But that's very, very vague. I don't think very many people visit our website just for fun and would see land use applications there. So I don't think that's actually super useful. Previously, there was an archive, and it's still, I actually took it down, although I didn't erase it or anything, but there's an archive of land use applications. But I don't like that's work for us to do, and I don't think anyone cares. I think we should let the county archive their own land use applications. But like if we're sort of trying to look at the spirit of where this is coming from, that like occasionally like this B&B thing, people really do want to know about a land use application and they care a lot. Really, what we really more want to do is include them in emails. And even there, that's tough because it's not usual for us to have 2 weeks go by with no emails, but like the window on these is 2 weeks. That's how long, and it's very, very possible that 2 weeks could go by and we could have no email going out. Or that we'll have an email going out right at the end. So yeah, I'm kind of stumped here. Like where I landed was like, if we like when the next time we send an email, we'll include it, but like we're not going to bend over backwards to try and take extra measures to let people know about these, because most people don't care.
So I'm
And the
just
county is-
brainstorming here, but
Yeah.
when the county sends out an information about a land use application, what do they do? Do they email it to admin or info?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know all I know they send out postcards that
Right.
they post it on their website with kind of the expectation that if you're someone who cares about land use applications, you'll just watch it.
Right. And they send
Um,
letters out to people who live nearby and that
Right.
kind of thing. But in terms of us, they email to info. So there could be like a 3-day delay even to be able to go and look at info to see it. I'm wondering if there's any kind of an automated system that would make it easier on the secretary to have a folder that if the county could send it with some kind of a code at the front or something where it could go dump directly into a folder on the website. Is there any automation that is potentially there that wouldn't
I
be
don't.
too difficult to do?
No, like that would be
Okay.
way outside like what we're kind of capable of doing. And B, I don't know that it would help because people don't go looking at the website to see if there have been land use applications, or at least
Yeah.
no one that I know of does. But no one has said, "Hey, can you keep the website up to date more with the land use applications?" Like I don't think anyone
Right.
is doing that. So,
So the
um,
bed and breakfast thing, how did people hear about that? Because it sounded like at the meeting, people were very aware of it already.
yeah, so some people came to the meeting with the intention of commenting, and probably they got the email via
The county.
or the postcards via the county.
Okay.
It's in their neighborhood, so there may be applications posted on the property.
Mhm.
I think there might. Does anyone know if there's like a neighborhood association, Susan? Maybe if there's like a neighborhood association for the village or something where.
No, not really, but, and I do quite a bit of walking in the village and there's nothing posted on that house.
Mhm.
To indicate that there's a land use issue that I've seen anyway.
Okay, but
So I think it's
some
more
people found out
the
somehow.
grapevine,
Yeah.
the
There's-
unofficial grapevine.
Yeah. But like a lot of land use applications are like it's unusual that they're in the village. It's much more common for them to be kind of on the other side of 101 and sort of where there's a lot more space and or in Sahali, places like that. So I don't know, like I think we should just put them in the next, like when we get one, we should just put them in the next email that goes out. But I do sort of recognize that that is not ideal because occasionally someone will have wanted notice earlier.
So how much does it take time does it take to post them? I
To the
mean,
website, or like I mean, it's
right.
like 5 minutes. You go open open the application, find out what the deadline is, and you read it enough to be able to explain it so that someone knows whether they care, which is mostly where is it and are they and what are they proposing to do. So it takes a minute to read that, to open it up and read that stuff, and a minute to write up a summary, but it's not a big deal, and they don't come in that often.
Okay. They don't. Okay. It's not a daily thing. Okay.
Oh, the other thing that I do is when if there happens to be an open land use application when we have a general meeting, I now like I talk about it. So, but like since we have a general meeting every 2 months,
Right.
and the application window is only 2 weeks usually, that it's a crapshoot. So
Right.
Jeff, didn't you have also a search function somewhere on the Nesquan CAC website where someone that linked to the county where someone could put in, for land use applications that the community and then pull up things directly from the county? I remember I actually have used that. I'm assuming it's still on the website. Curiosity's sake,
I
sometimes
don't,
I wondered what's going on.
yeah, I'm
within-
not sure what, like, we don't have like a special search of the county or anything like that. It used to be that I think Biff was just had like every time we got a land use application, he would kind of make a record of it. And if there was people who like I took that down and no one said boo, so people were not using it.
I was using it.
Okay, all right. Well, so if you want me to put it back
I
up,
just
but
assumed it was still up. Yeah, it's really a good reference. I thought it was great because
Mhm.
then they don't have to bug you.
okay. So you, I mean, it just means that someone has to maintain that page, and we have people who might be able to do that. But there's no reason we can't do that. I just yeah, I don't know, like, because they if there is a desire, like it sounds like Susan would like one for a historical record of our land use applications. That's a little bit of work for someone, but I don't think it's a big deal.
Yeah, it wasn't something, I mean, it was something that linked to the county. So my understanding is it would be maintained by the county, but you could link to it from our NCAC web.
I
Maybe
can
I'm-
look into if there's a way to link to count, like if they have a way to get just Nesquin land use applications. Like,
Oh, you had me myself, when I would go in and look, I had to enter in what I wanted to look for. But I thought
oh, okay. So if yeah, we can put a
Okay,
link to the county
that's what it was.
planning stuff on. Yeah, that's easy.
Yeah, because I think it was under the helpful links part of our
Oh, if it's still there, like I didn't change any helpful links, so if there's one there, it might still be
yeah,
there.
I'll have to look back. I haven't looked lately, but I know
Okay.
recently the South Beach parking structure thing, you know, bubbled up to the surface. I don't know what's going on with that now, but I remember someone came to one of the meetings and was concerned about that. And now it seems like the B&B thing is bubbling up. And you can keep track of like the documents that are being submitted to the county to see
Mhm.
neighbors that are, you know, submitting public comment, and it's helpful just to know.
Yeah, so if we end up getting a monitoring task force, which may be a while because it's hard to find volunteers for some of the ones we already have, but this is an area that could be put under that, don't you think? That could be one of the monitoring functions, and
Mhm.
we could actually even at some point move land use applications out of the communications task force role and into monitoring if we ever get that going. But for now, it's in communications, so.
Okay.
Could it be under librarian if we were trying to consolidate a little bit? Or I guess if we want to
Well,
keep things
yeah,
small and
I think we know that like we're probably never going to have one person for each of these items. I'm just kind of
Mhm.
divided it
Yeah,
this way up
breaking
for
it down.
organization.
Sure.
But and yeah, it kind of goes well with the librarian. Like yeah, sure. And by the way, I did check helpful links, Susan, and it wasn't there, but we can add that. That's not a big deal.
Okay. Yeah, that
Um,
kind of makes something wieldy for anyone who's the secretary, but I think just linking it to the county thing and letting people put in their own stuff makes it helpful.
Okay. All right. Now the big one.
Mhm.
Email notices. And I think I wrote down all the important stuff here because so I get like I just am gonna kind of go through it really quick, see if anyone has any questions or suggestions that you want to add to the PNPs, but probably you mostly want to just get like pull from this to compose the PNPs. So like we send out email notices, and what goes in them, notices like meeting notices, especially about the big ones. And by big, I mean we want people to come rather than subcommittee meetings where if it's sort of if the public doesn't show up, it's not really any skin off our back. Announcements like for elections and other things, requests for help. Please join this subcommittee and or task force. Any active land use applications that we just mentioned that happen to be active when the email goes out. I have a new idea for how to notify the recurring meetings, the subcommittee meetings, and the executive board meetings, where there's just going to be a spot where it says bylaws meets first and third Fridays, community plan meets every other Monday. Go to the meeting archive to find out what the agendas are, or go to the calendar to find out what the agendas are. I think that is sufficient for public notice for those, and it's easier than what I have been doing.
So I'm wondering, Jeff, if instead of putting just agenda, if you could put meeting folder, and that way, right now, if I change an agenda, that link doesn't change.
I strongly oppose that because most people will find that very off-putting and friction. So I think
you object to what? Changing the agenda or changing the link?
I object to directing people to the folder for the meeting because, like we've been talking about, how many people in Nesquin are technology uncomfortable, and I think most people, like lots of people, will just be like, "What are all these things?" And a lot of other people will be, "I can't be bothered to go find the agenda, so I'm just not going to bother to look."
Okay. So I've been
I have
putting
a
the
strong
link.
opinion on that.
Okay, I've been putting the link to the meeting folder on the agenda. I'm hoping, is that for you guests that are like Tom Prahodich, is that working okay for you to find the documents? Because we upload documents sometimes kind of at the last minute too, so that meeting folder can change.
Well, I think that's okay. I just think that if
Because it's helpful for people if they're going to attend the meeting, right? To be able to see the documents that are going to be used at the
that is
meeting.
a very, very unusual situation where someone is interested enough that they're going to go look at the documents ahead of time. Like
Or
super
during.
fans like Tom might do that. Tom too
Or
might do
during.
that, but I think that's unusual. And I think we should link to the documents folder in the calendar entry, which is not what we're talking about right now.
What are we talking about?
We are
That's what I was
talking
talking
about what is
about.
included in the email notifications that go out.
Oh, no. Just the calendar entry is what I was talking about. Sorry,
Okay.
I'm off topic because you are
You're
talking
off
about
topic.
email notices.
Yeah.
But in the calendar entry, could we link to the documents folder as opposed to the agenda?
And I oppose that. Like our public meeting obligation is to let people know what the meetings are about. And I think if we put too many steps, we're kind of falling down. And so if you have to go to the calendar, then you have to go to the Google Docs folder. And if you happen to be someone who is intimidated by the Google Docs folder and can't figure out because suppose that you're looking on your phone and you can't see all the full file names and it's hard to figure out which one is the agenda. Like, I think that's a bad idea. Like, the agenda needs to be right up in your face. I would
Yeah, it
even
is.
post it on
It's usually the
I would
first
cut and
word.
paste the
Even with our name, it's BY_agenda, so it's pretty easy to, but whatever. Not a big deal. Tom Prahodich, I see you took your took your microphone block thing off. So did you have a comment on this?
No,
Okay.
I'm just listening.
So you can figure out when I send something out. I mean, you can figure out where to get the documents and everything. Of course,
Yeah.
you're a regular, so okay.
Yeah. I think
All
Tom
right.
Prahodich is not he's not our North Star for what a regular old person in Nesquin.
Sure. Okay. Well, I can give on that.
Okay.
Occasionally I can give on stuff.
Okay. So back to email notices. And okay. And the last thing that should go in an email notice for me is so we have the regular schedule posted. If a committee is going to change their schedule because of a holiday, like the community plan had to do that because of like a lot of holidays fall on Mondays.
Yeah.
Or whatnot. We post that. We say like, hey, like your regularly scheduled community plan meeting is going to be this other time. When do we send them? So I have been sending them basically just on an ad hoc basis when there's a meeting that needs to be noticed. I I send that out. Like if there's a big meeting or a meeting that hasn't been noticed yet, that's a good time to send an email. And it turns out that like we have a steady enough drumbeat of unusual meetings that there's almost always at least one every 2 weeks where something needs to be noticed. I think for sanity's sake, for whoever is going to do this going forward, especially if that person is not going to chase people down for announcements and is more like going to just put the email together, and it's going to be on the subcommittees to make sure that to take care of that they know when their announcements have to happen and make sure that they're going to make it to the email. I think it would be useful to say we're going to send out an email on exactly 2 weeks before a general meeting and on these other dates, and the other dates might be just the other like a month away. And because that just it makes things simpler, it puts things on a schedule, it makes things more predictable, makes things less reactive. But it also means that it's on the subcommittees. Like if you have a special meeting that you need to announce, you are on the hook to get the information to the person compiling the email by this deadline. Which different subcommittee chairs may have more or less trouble with. So thoughts?
I think if you have the deadlines specified, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
So I don't know where you would put that, but something for the committee chairs to go to see where the deadline is.
I mean, we could put that like a web page, like instructions for committee chairs to get their stuff in the email newsletter. So I see some nods. I can't see Gary. Gary is not one of the people who I can see right now. But any thoughts from people?
I
Sounds
think
good to
it's
me.
a good idea to have deadlines for the chairs, especially if they're incoming and they want to organize for the year ahead. They can put it in their calendars when they need to get material to the secretary.
Okay, so let's write this down.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot, because then we have some idea of when we need to get you more information than we have now. I think your emails have been extremely well written and easy to follow and everything. I just don't always know when's coming out, so that's really good. And most of the time, it doesn't matter for us. One thing that I have been remiss in all this time is getting a bylaws page designed to be able to have a bylaws subcommittee page, and I'd like to be able to do that this year. Maybe we can have a subcommittee to get that set up, just so that we have something saying it's every first and third Friday, and this is what we're working on, and here's a link to the bylaws, and here's what our latest version of PNP, or I don't know, something like that. But it can be pretty simple. But we've got 2 people now vying or interested in doing web stuff, so hopefully we can work on that this year.
Okay, so we'll put this in the PNPs. It'll probably be me, but I or someone else will set this page up. Work with Gary about the rules here. Let's see. Okay, so how many can we send? We're allowed to send 5 emails a month. There's only been one time where I actually sent 5. I think we don't want to send 5. Oh, before I go, like I think the schedule should be general meeting. How about So on the, so every other month, it should be a general meeting. And, yeah, and actually, there's actually more on this topic.
Yeah,
And
we're
then-
calling them regular meetings now.
I know, I'm just,
Um,
and then 4 weeks before that, 5 weeks before that, or I think that's the right way to go. Like, and but what happens if we reschedule the regular meeting?
yeah, I mean, I think some of it's just gonna have to be ad hoc, but
Well, I'm going to go
did you
back
want to
that.
have a regular schedule though? I mean, because do you want to have at least one a month or?
So I think there should be one scheduled email a month, but then, and let's table this for now, that one of them should be, it doesn't necessarily have to be exactly 2 weeks before the regular meeting, but I think there's some benefit to that. But then the other month where we don't have a regular, like we just need a way to schedule it. And probably it should just be, say 4 weeks after a regular meeting, or 4 or 5 weeks after, but we should look at the calendar and figure it out.
Mhm.
And we should have rules for what happens when the meeting date gets changed. And probably that means that the schedule stays the same, the email schedule stays the same, and we add an extra.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, or that we can, on an ad hoc basis, change the email schedule when we ad hoc change the
Mhm.
so
Sounds like figuring out when Easter is.
yes.
Right.
I think that's good there for the 4 or 5 weeks after a regular meeting, because I think, I think we're gonna have, we're talking next week about 2 sort of special membership meetings. One for STR cap issue and the other for the FEMA issue. So, maybe more of these, what I would almost consider more like a general meeting, are gonna come up even in the off months, so.
Right, and I think as long as those and I guess if something comes up where we don't have enough notice to include it in the regularly scheduled email, we just send a special email. But that's probably unusual.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna come back and talk about more here. But so if the regular meeting schedule changes, that we have a process. Okay, now, like reminders have been really useful.
Yeah.
So we should have these regular emails that go out about roughly once a month, like 2 weeks before a general meeting, and then 5 weeks after a general meeting, or thereabouts.
Yeah.
Like we can look at the calendar and kind of optimize that. And then we should just, like, whenever we're going to have any meeting where we want people to come, we will also have an ad hoc reminder that's like 2 days before. And in most cases, it will be a copy of the email, the last general email, maybe with some minor adjustments to, like, we remove stuff that's now out of date or stuff like that.
Yeah, because that kind of thing is really helpful, like when the community plan has been having their town halls, or Sarah's been having a presentation, or like last year with our feedback sessions. It was really helpful that you were sending out these reminders.
Mhm.
Yeah, reminders seem to be very valuable. So we'll have one email a month that goes out on a schedule, and the schedule can adjust if the meeting schedules change, but like it'll have a default schedule, and then reminders for any meeting that we want to remind people about. So a regular membership meeting that we want to let people know about. So sound good?
Mhm.
Okay.
Sounds good.
So we can send 5. I've only ever sent 5 once. We don't want to send 5, but I've been getting behind and sending out emails lately without having people proofread them. I've been busted with a bunch of typos that were bad enough that I needed to send out corrections. So it's also good to have kind of like an extra emails in the hole in case if you need to send out something that you weren't planning on. So I think the minimum, like someone has to just assemble all of this announcement stuff together, and the information. It would be nice if someone was also kind of trying to make the emails cohesive and look nice and be persuasive. But we won't necessarily always have someone who is going to put in that extra effort.
That has been something really nice that you've done, Jeff. I mean, I send you some wording and you always make it look better. So,
well, that
it's been good.
I am I identify as a writer, so and yeah, so I compulsively edit things. So okay, on the subject of physical notices, which used to be in the bylaws and now are not in the bylaws, but there's like there was some talk of putting them in the P&Ps.
Mhm.
Yeah, we were talking about, possibly talking about options that aren't as labor intensive as the previous bylaws where you had to post every meeting, and possibly doing something where you do an annual notice in key places like the store. If we could talk to
Alexis.
Oh, thank you, Alexis. I talked to her about that a little bit, but something that's not as hard to do on a regular basis. So
I'm gonna stay out of that one. I think that I think when we had the post office, where like everyone was going to the post office to get their mail, like that was a great place to put a physical notice. Now we have a few. There's South Beach has its own post spot where people do see notices. I think there's a few mailboxes around. Like I see some by the parking lot. I don't know whose mailboxes those are, but the parking lot by the bus stop. And I think Hillcrest has a mailbox pod or something, or Hawk Hills, sorry. So there are a few spots, but I don't know how many of those there are, and we're privileging the people who happen to live somewhere with a mailbox over the people who. So yeah, I just think that whole subject, like, it made sense when they wrote it down because we had the post office and that was an obvious place. And now I'm just not sure that physical notices really have a lot of value and whether they're worth the trouble, because they're very
For
much.
me, I disagree, because if someone doesn't know the organization exists, there's no way they find out about it. And there are spots, like you say, South Beach and the Hillcrest and in the village, there are glassed-in areas. I have a relationship with Alexis, so I'm willing to, speak with her.
Mhm.
But
And there's a
people-
golf course,
Yeah, that's exactly what the glassed-in memo board at the golf course.
Who
But
was,
people who come new to Nesquan, who know nothing, absolutely nothing, that want to get involved and be part of the community, I think it's really critical to give them that information somehow, at least once a year, or to have a post so that they can get involved. Because if, say, somebody buys not during the summer months and they move in February, I mean, most people wouldn't do that, but if they did and they want to get tied into the community, and the population during the off season is fairly low, we need to allow information so people can know even what is available, and we
So
can't
even
ask a realtor to tell them.
so it was this going to be a physical job? Somebody, it was the secretary was doing this?
It's
Yeah, I
always
used to do
been
it.
done historically, yeah.
But maybe rather than like.
I'm just thinking, I'm not looking, I'm not signing up to that. I'm not gonna go driving around the neighborhood for all these physical notices. I don't even know where all the locations would be. And I just, that's asking a little too much, I think.
Well, that's why, Gary, why we actually took it out of the bylaws. And we were going to put it in the P&P after we kind of figured out how to simplify it, because we did feel like it was too arduous.
So I would say that, like, speaking to Susan's concern, putting a non-time specific flyer in the store
Right.
or in the golf course, like that, the outreach community can do, or the committee can do that. Like let's
Right.
say that's not the secretary's job. And it doesn't have to do with meetings. It has to do with like publicizing like the outreach effort. So
Absolutely.
I agree
I
with,
think that's a, oh, go ahead, Mark.
yeah, I agree with that, Jeff, that it's not a secretary duty. And I would just say that public bulletin boards are just a great way to, post them, right? I mean, when I was a school principal, we always had a public bulletin board in the school, and anybody could post something as long as it wasn't, racist or harassment or violated any laws. They could come in and post it on the bulletin board. And that sort of thinking, I don't know if they have one at the golf course, but maybe they could, I don't know, that would be at one place, and maybe the store could be considered a public bulletin board, but definitely something for the outreach committee, I think, like Jeff said.
Yeah, and I hear you. I see you, Michael. I just want to say, I think it could just be a poster that has a pretty picture of Nescoin or something on it, and then just do you know about the NCAC? Spell it out, say
Yeah.
give a website address, and it can be really simple and for more
Yeah.
information and get
Exactly
involved with
what I'm-
Nescoin. And I think you're right, moving it to the outreach committee would be perfect if we can get people on the outreach committee. Michael?
Well, that's something that I've often thought about, that it would be kind of nice to have a public bulletin board in that parking lot outside the store. That was built right there, and anybody could hang stuff there. I mean, it was just, something that the village could count on, that there would be stuff there. I'm just wondering if that's a possibility.
I wonder if it could even be put in the parking lot
That's what I mean.
there.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I mean. Just to build a little cupola, or not a cupola, but yeah, a little stand.
Weather protected.
Yeah, sure.
That someone
Well,
would have
Little
keys to be able to
welcome
maintain.
Nescoin, here's what's going on, or whatever. Yeah.
well, I don't know who owns the parking lot, whether that's the store itself or someone else owns it, but
Kind of think it's the county, isn't it? But we can check with Sarah, because it also includes the restrooms there and everything. But
Well,
but anyway, why don't we make the decision, at least temporarily, that we move physical notices to the outreach committee
Good.
task force? Does that sound fair to everybody?
okay. Maintaining the calendar.
Could you note that, Jeff?
Okay, sure.
Move to outreach.
And I think a tentative decision has been that they're non-date specific.
Right.
Well,
Right.
I mean,
Like annual notices or something.
I think the outreach committee can post physical things as often as they want.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
But I think it can be at their discretion based on what they think is going to help.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Grow the membership.
Yeah, right. So maintaining the calendar. So this is in like, I don't know how many people use the calendar, but I know Sarah does, and probably and it's also a useful tool in conjunction with the email notices, that we have a permanent. Here's the Zoom information. Here's the agenda. So this is a fairly important function. It doesn't take a whole lot of time, but like, it's just one of those things where when you combine it with everything else, it does sort of, it's something that I notice a lot in terms of things I pay attention to, but it is important.
So I noticed that you maintain the calendar like maybe a month to 2 months in advance, right? And then you don't put anything beyond that for the regularly scheduled meetings.
Just for my own sanity, I do it about a month in advance. I think if there was someone who was, their main job on the communications task force was maintaining the calendar, I would totally encourage them to just put all the meetings 6 months in advance. And you don't need, they don't even necessarily need to put the Zoom in stuff in until a month in advance, but just have it all there so that someone on the calendar can go look. But yes, I have been just in the name of limiting the amount of time I spend on it, like only going about a month in advance.
And that works. That works.
And I don't know, like for the P&Ps, it's important. The calendar entries should have a description, Zoom information, and agenda. There's the dimension that agendas need to be supplied and then they need to be posted. But I don't know what you put in the P&Ps other than that, like we should maintain the calendar entries this far in advance, and that every calendar entry should have Zoom meeting info, an agenda, at least with a week ahead of the meeting, and yeah, but I don't know what you need beyond that. But it is a
potentially a
significant
documents folder.
What?
Potentially a documents folder. But
Yeah, and a documents folder if the meeting has documents. Yes, like that should go in there. That if the meeting has documents, that there should be a link to the documents folder.
I find the calendar very helpful. I go into that frequently
So
myself.
do I.
Yeah.
And I think that's how people get the Zoom link for the meetings too.
Okay. Any thoughts other than what I just said? What you just said?
No.
Okay. Yeah. The calendar is pretty straightforward, but it is one of the most important things that the secretary of the communications task force does. So. Okay.
I guess just a comment on the calendar as I think about it. I just wonder, I wonder if maybe, and this is just a side comment, but maybe when we meet as an executive committee, we should, I don't know, maybe look at the calendar.
Sure.
Just for, I think,
just for kind of keeping in
just
mind
to look
our-
ahead, Jeff,
Sure.
for a month or two and say, just flash it up there and say, okay, well, we want to finish the community plan in this time frame, or, this date or something, something like that. But just for the executive committee, nothing you have to write here, but.
Okay, that seems like a good idea. And then there's Zoom, and really this is just like there's some work associated with Zoom. And not a lot of work, but creating polls. For big meetings, someone has to have the job of like hosting the meeting and conducting polls and things like that. And I would like it's not hard. I would like more people to be comfortable with it, so that we had more people kind of who are Zoom Sherpas for us. But I don't know what there is to write in the P&Ps about this, other than that it's part of the job of the communications task force to make sure that when Zoom support is needed, we have Zoom support to set up new meetings and be the meeting host.
Yeah.
Record to the cloud. Like that's one of the things that, like, to record to the cloud, someone has to log in as the NCAC host account, things like that. So
yeah, and I think the only time we've run into problems with one Zoom account is when we do polls and multiple people come in as the admin for the account, and not intentionally. Zoom just does that sometimes. You go in as you think you're going in as your personal account, but Zoom remembers you as the NCAC account. So that there was only one time when that mattered, and it was on an Article 3 feedback session where it really mattered, but we were able to kind of get through that. Otherwise, it's been fine. I think the other thing that came up once was I had gone in and created a bunch of Zoom meetings for the bylaws subcommittee, and it fouled you up. And so you just went in and, you told me about it first, but you went in and got rid of my meetings and created yours. And I
think
don't
that
really
the
remember
calendar
why,
person should be the person to, like, they should be the only person creating meetings, just for a
because that way you could do your own links or something.
Yeah.
So that worked out. I stopped doing it. So we might want to just note only the calendar person creates Zoom meetings. I think I done it up to like 4 months in advance or something. I was setting out my turf.
Yeah. Okay. And then there's the uploading to YouTube, which is, we want to put that in the P&Ps because it's important for Oregon public meeting law compliance.
Right.
And that is not hard, but we can specify how the meetings are titled in YouTube, the different categories that they go in, because I have playlists for bylaws, I have playlists for general meetings, I have playlists for the executive board, all that stuff, playlists for the meetings for the community plan, stuff like that. So
is that something you can you could write that up then, Jeff?
yeah,
An action item for you?
I can do that when you're ready for it. So it won't take a long time. So
yeah, so great, thank you. So instead of should have, Jeff will. Right. Thank you.
Okay.
I know we're quite over time, but this is really working. The meeting's going to end by 11. But I think this is really critical. We can defer some of the policies and procedures. We can make that really brief later and talk about it next meeting. So if there are no objections, let's continue with this. This is okay.
We're almost done.
Okay.
So there are routine items that go on the website. The most important of those, so moving on to the website. The most important of those is keeping because the calendar, I think that's a special thing. And then there's keeping the meeting archive up to date. I think that goes well with calendar. I kind of want to like bundle that with calendar, but doesn't have to, but I think that makes sense. And then there's just sort of like stuff that needs to be updated every now and again, like when we have an election or when the bylaws change or that stuff. And keeping that stuff up to date is important.
What about the contact us construct? A lot of websites have that. Do we have that? I'm not aware of it.
What's on there? It's way down at the bottom. So it's kind of hidden, but I'm going to put that in a different category. So these are just things that like on a fairly regular basis, someone needs to go onto the website and make a change to make sure that the information is up to date. And so that's a thing that needs. I don't know that there's anything to kind of write down in the P&Ps about doing it. Like the P&Ps definitely want to say about the meeting archive, and I don't. Do you think do you think we need to write down notes about what that says? Because I think it's pretty straightforward that we will have a meeting archive. Let's do it. Let's go ahead and do it. A new meeting archive page for every term. Old meeting archive pages should be easy to find. Agenda.
You mean it? I'm not sure what you mean by that first line.
Should have a new meeting archive page. Sorry.
Okay.
Meaning, let's see.
Yeah, got it now. Thank you. Got it. Yeah, it was pretty cool going into the archive page and see there are all those lists and lists and lists of meeting stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, that was
So
good.
I don't know if you've seen the new one yet, but I organized it to be a little bit less dense.
Yeah.
And maybe we should we should have them organized by category, but that I think only if someone is kind of taking it on and like they're because I just said that's too much work and I'm just putting everything in one place. But if we
I
have a
think that
dedicated
works.
person keeping the calendar and the meeting archive, they could definitely organize the different meetings by meeting type instead of just by
I kind of like the way you have it because that way people can see time on a time basis what is happening, and there's a lot going on. So
or add
well,
little
maybe I want to
icons
look at this
show-
one too, or
Yeah.
something.
So
show
what do you
which
mean by
activity-
term? I'm not quite sure.
A
mean,
term runs from July 1st to June 30th.
Okay, annual.
Yeah, but annual, not calendar year.
Yeah,
Fiscal year.
okay,
Right.
okay,
But
got it.
I don't know if it's fiscal year because we don't have a lot of money, but it's the
Fiscal
year
year.
based on when bylaw, like it's the year based on when the bylaws committee serves. And other annual things. So
Okay, I got it. I just didn't know what.
Because like for you guys, a term is 2 years, but whatever. Yeah, we'll figure it out. Yeah.
okay. And every meeting should have agenda and video and chat, minutes, and documents folder.
Yeah.
And I think there's like some meetings don't even have an agenda, but but I will go ahead and say that. And there's probably I'll go ahead and leave it like that. Anything else for routine website maintenance that should go in the PNPs? Certainly, like whenever there's an election, I think like
Mhm.
and the website like important information should be kept up to date. So okay, now there's bigger thing that we have bigger fish we could fry. So for a long time, for most of the last year, I have been keeping kind of a what's new section on the homepage with kind of the most important information. How many of you actually ever saw that?
I did.
Nancy did. That's because it's way down below the fold, and I think I finally like realized that no one was even ever scrolling down to see it. So I think that's useful. I think having kind of like it's sort of the similar content to what goes out in the newsletters, but just sort of keep the homepage up to date. Here's kind of the hot stuff going on that you need to know about the NCAC right now. But the homepage would need to be redesigned, and someone would have to keep it up to date. It could be the same person. Like I think that goes well with the newsletter editor. Like if we have a newsletter editor, they could also be the editor for the homepage. So that's something like if we redesign the homepage so that was visible. And this may not be pertinent to PNPs, so we don't need to. If we don't necessarily need to talk about it since we're running low on time. I'll leave it up to you.
It sounds like that's something that as Gary and the website people come on board and decide these kinds of things, we can update the PNP accordingly. You know,
Okay.
the PNP we see as a living document, and we'll probably have a number of changes coming out throughout the year as opposed to the bylaws where it was a one-time only thing. So, but if anyone has any thoughts on what they would like to see in the larger website improvements, please feel free. I know you. And we'll be happy to just include as some of that comes out.
Okay, then I think we're done.
Well, this is extremely helpful. Does anybody have any overall questions or comments, suggestions? And Jeff, if you could send a link to the Google Doc or just send us and that will be helpful. We can,
I'll just put it in the chat because
okay.
I already sent this to you and Michael and Susan and Gary, and this is a Google Doc, so like the link you had is still good. I'm gonna stop.
Okay, good. All right, and I put it in the meeting folder, documents folder, so it'll
Okay.
see the most updated. Okay, great.
All right, then I won't put it in the chat. I'm gonna stop sharing unless people are still looking.
Mhm. Thank you very much. Gary, any thoughts as the incoming secretary of how this is going? I mean, we'll work closely with you as we develop the document to make sure you're satisfied with what's going on, and appreciate your input on all of that. But just to begin with, if you have any thoughts, we'd love to hear them.
Well, no, other than any opportunity we can take to share the load, I think is something to think about, especially since there's going to be better expertise outside of me for some of this stuff. I'd have to say things like with web development and stuff like that is one of my weaker areas. I have a personal website, but and it's Squarespace, so I have some familiarity with that. But it's one of those things where pick the simplest template, don't deviate from the template too much, and everything works out fine. So if it comes to using more specialized features within Squarespace, that's certainly something where expertise from outside needs to come into. Google Drive, yeah, I've got familiarity with Google Drive, but once again, that's something that if there's some areas where people can take some help with, especially with email stuff, that would help as well. So no, I mean, it's actually still quite a load though. I won't.
It is.
Yeah, as one of the people that pressured Gary to do this with Jeff, it's an extraordinary amount of work, and part of it is that Jeff has extended and increased the amount of work. The one thing that I want Gary to be assured of is that, well, first of all, Jeff's agreed to hang around for a while, and that'll be helpful, and hopefully Derek and I can't remember the other gentleman's name.
Rich.
Rich. They can go beyond simply website stuff. I mean, their Zoom and, for example, should be within their bailiwick. But I want to assure Gary that if he needs help, and Jeff may still be talking to people who are going to be on the or at least prospective people for the communications task force. But when you run into trouble or you feel like you're overloaded, yell, and we'll fan out and find some people to help.
Okay.
I promise.
Tom is very
Absolutely.
good at asking people to help.
Yeah, so I mean, just in the spirit of transparency, so I'm still a board member and an active cert with the South Tillamook County Emergency Volunteer Corps. That's kind of where my passion is, and so I'm a little concerned about any conflicts in time and bandwidth that come up. I may appear to lean more towards the emergency side of it, and if that's the case, I'm sorry. It's not that it's intentional. It's just that there are things that come up with the emergency preparedness stuff that I think is pretty important, and we're there even more short-staffed, I think, than the NCAC is. So a lot of us have to wear double hats in that organization.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully by the way that Jeff has broken down these jobs into, I've been calling them snackable, but chunks, hopefully we can get more people involved, and that will be better for the whole overall NCAC. And so we'll just need to do some more fanning out, and Jeff and I have a couple of follow-ups on some of these that we need to look at too on a couple of people possibly identified to handle the email part of it and that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
just as an example of one thing he's done that's sort of off people's radar screen is that he and Dave Sears constructed the emergency shed in South Beach. And
Oh.
they're still trying to find, which is across the street from me by the smaller water tower. And everybody should go look at it. I mean, we need some in Hawk Creek Hills. But anyway, you know, that's work beyond what most of us are doing as volunteers. So
yeah,
very important.
Well, we appreciate you stepping up, Gary, and look forward to working with you in the future. And Jeff, I'm so glad we have that loophole for you to be able to stay in. So that's really great for us. So I'm going to move on to the policies and procedures discussion action plan. So Tom, thank you so much. Tom reorganized the policies and procedures into different categories, which helped me understand better what we were talking about. So thank you, Tom. Would you care to, we just have a few minutes, but why don't you just share your document real fast and we can look at that and then we'll defer the discussion to the next meeting.
Okay. Okay, really quick run through. Basically, and I've made the note here that we're going to define the should, shall, should, and may, but divided it into two pieces. Didn't change any content, just added a few things. Policies being the rules that we put down in terms of access, website information, periodic surveys, that sort of thing. Those are rules. Procedures is what we mostly talked about today, which is basically how things get done. And this is the section on page, what is it, 3, that's going to be expanded to encompass what Jeff has done and what we've discussed today. So this will be greatly expanded the next time you see it.
And we also have more information from the previous meeting on the chairperson and some of the work with county that we can insert.
And in the brief amount of time, I think it's about as deep as we can go. Does anybody have a problem with dividing it out like that? I don't know about the order, but it seemed like rules should go before procedures.
Yeah, no, I like the format, and I think, you know, organizationally, like with the bylaws, we'll see some changes as we go along, but I'm with you on it. I may not have been initially, but I'm getting it now. So so thank you. Can you stop sharing? And then going forward, I think for us to talk about next meeting is how we fill this out. And you know, I think there's still some value at looking at the bylaws section articles and where we need to flesh it out. You know, we've made some notes as we were going through the bylaws, but not quite enough notes on where we want to, and in terms of organizing, it doesn't have to follow the bylaws, but in terms of how we go through figuring out what we need to put in the P&P, we might want to use that as a starting point or not. So think about that between now and our next meeting about how we want to go through and assign our little sub task forces to go in and come up with some ideas for that. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay, for our next meeting. So our next meeting is on September 6th. As I mentioned, we have 3 weeks. Our next board meeting is on next Wednesday. And if anyone, does anyone have anything you'd like me to bring up at the board meeting in particular? Because right now, go ahead.
I don't think so, Nancy. Just a quick summary of what we, you know, of this and the interviews, sort of the interviews and where you are in the P&P.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So those are happening monthly, and hoping we can actually come up with a schedule for the board meeting so we can do some planning around that. And of course, one of the areas we're going to need to put in the P&P is how do you change a meeting if it's a membership meeting or whatever. And that, I think that'll be something that'll be fairly easy to come up with some idea and then present it to the board and let them figure out if they like that like to edit it or whatever. So I think we're good. I think we're not going to have quite the intensity that we had last year, but there'll be a lot of useful information to kind of put this policy procedure manual together.
Just a comment, Nancy, if I could, before we close. I
Please.
just want to, I joined this meeting late, and so I apologize for that. I got tied up, but Gary, I just want to welcome you to the leadership position, the secretary position, and thank you for doing this so much. Jeff has just been great, and it's wonderful that he's going to stick around, I hope, a little bit, kind of keep his nose in it. He's just got a super practical and get it done kind of approach that I think all of us really, really appreciate. So, and don't be shied away from, it'll be busy at times during the year, Gary, and then it'll slow up. That's what I've found. And so I understand you've got some other commitments, and we will recognize that. So, so welcome.
Thank you, Mark.
Here.
Yeah, and Gary will be since you weren't there Saturday, Mark.
Yeah.
Gary will be officially secretary starting on Wednesday.
Yeah. Okay. I saw that. Yep.
And also kudos to you, Mark. Thank you so much for continuing to stay in your position. We're all very, very happy about that. So
Very grateful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Everybody has other commitments too. So so we do have public comment. Does anyone have any actual public comment?
I do. I just want to say that it's, as I've said before, that to Nancy, to Susan, to Michael, to Tom one, thank you for your continuing work. As the only person that has no official role in the NCAC that is attended today, I think you need to be continually lauded. Mark, thanks for being, when you can. You don't have to attend every meeting, but your input today was very helpful, and certainly to Jeff and Gary for Jeff's wonderful work in the past, and what I really do assume will be Gary and his task force continuing wonderful work. So
yeah.
Anyway, love you all.
We love you too. All right. With that said, I think our action items are minutes, updating Jeff's, thank you very much, schedule, plan on working on the policies and procedures document and a process for coming up with new policies and procedures at our next meeting. And I think that's it. So thank you all very, very much. Terrific committee and support people. Okay, meeting adjourned at 10:59. We're actually a minute early.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.